The owl arrived on Sheriff Daniel Carter's porch at 4:17 in the morning, just as freezing rain began striking the windows of his isolated farmhouse. Daniel woke to the sound of claws scraping wood, followed by three heavy knocks against the front door. When he stepped outside with a flashlight, he found a large barred owl perched on the porch railing. One wing drooped lower than the other, and wet feathers clung to its body. The bird stared at Daniel without blinking, opened one talon, and released a small silver key onto the boards. A thin leather tag hung from the key ring. Two initials had been engraved into it, E.M. Daniel recognized them immediately. They belonged to Evelyn Moore, the elementary school teacher who had disappeared 8 months earlier on her way home from an evening parent conference. Her car had been found beside a forest road with the driver's door open, her phone broken beneath the seat, and blood on the steering wheel. No body was ever recovered. Police believed she had been abducted, but every lead ended without an arrest. Daniel picked up the key. Fresh mud filled its grooves, and one corner of the leather tag had been stained dark red. The owl lifted from the railing, flew toward the tree line, and landed on a fence post. It turned its head toward Daniel, waited, then flew deeper into the forest. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write in the comments. Would you follow an injured owl into a dark forest if it carried the key of someone who had been missing for months? Daniel Carter had served as sheriff of Pine Hollow County for 11 years. At 51, he was a tall black man with broad shoulders, dark brown eyes, and a gray line spreading through his close beard. He had spent most of his career working rural cases that rarely attracted cameras: stolen farm equipment, domestic violence, missing hunters, illegal dumping, and accidents on roads where emergency services arrived too late. Evelyn Moore's disappearance was different. She was 36, unmarried, and taught 4th grade at Pine Hollow Elementary. Children trusted her because she never raised her voice to make herself heard. Parents described her as patient, organized, and incapable of disappearing voluntarily. She cared for her widowed father, volunteered at the county library, and kept a strict routine. On the night she vanished, Evelyn left school at 8:12 after meeting with the parents of a troubled student. A traffic camera recorded her sedan entering Old Quarry Road 20 minutes later. That route did not lead to her home. It led toward Briarwood Forest, an area of abandoned logging trails, hunting cabins, and a disused juvenile camp closed after allegations of abuse. At 9:03, a passing truck driver reported Evelyn's car parked partly in the road. The engine was running. Her handbag remained on the passenger seat, but a folder of school records was missing. Investigators found a small amount of her blood and prints belonging only to Evelyn and 2 school employees who had ridden in the car weeks earlier. Search dogs followed her scent into the forest for less than half a mile before losing it beside a shallow creek. Daniel led searches for 6 weeks. Volunteers covered ravines, wells, barns, and hunting properties. Divers checked the quarry lake. Helicopters scanned from above. Nothing explained why Evelyn turned onto Old Quarry Road or who waited there. Her father, George Moore, refused to believe she was dead. Every Sunday, he placed fresh flowers outside the school and asked Daniel the same question. "Did you find anything they missed?" Daniel always answered honestly, "Not yet." Over time, pressure faded. State investigators moved to other cases. Local newspapers stopped printing Evelyn's photograph. The county board approved demolition of the abandoned juvenile camp, and the forest returned to silence. Daniel did not close the file, but he had no new direction until the owl dropped Evelyn's key on his porch. He photographed it before touching anything else and called Deputy Lena Brooks, the only member of his department he trusted completely. Then he contacted wildlife rehabilitator Hannah Cole, who confirmed from his description that the owl was injured but still capable of flight. She warned him not to chase it carelessly through the woods. A wild owl might land randomly, and assigning purpose to its movements could lead searchers away from evidence. Daniel agreed. Yet the key had not attached itself to the bird by accident. The leather loop was torn, not tied, suggesting the owl picked it up from somewhere. Mud, plant material, and possible blood could reveal the location. The bird flew again when Daniel crossed the yard. It traveled only short distances, landing where his flashlight remained visible. Daniel followed in his patrol truck until the forest road narrowed, then continued on foot. The owl led him north through trees toward land that once belonged to Pine Hollow Youth Development Center. The facility had opened in the 1970s as a residential school for boys labeled difficult, neglected, or delinquent. It closed 15 years earlier after former residents accused staff of beatings, forced labor, and isolation. County officials claim records had been lost in a basement flood. Several buildings burned in a suspicious fire before investigators could examine them. The property was later purchased by Vail Timber and Mining, a company owned by wealthy developer Victor Vail. Vail announced plans to build an outdoor recreation resort, but construction never began. Security guards prevented hikers from entering because the soil supposedly contained asbestos and unstable foundations. Evelyn had taught at the youth center early in her career. She worked there for 6 months before resigning without explanation. Daniel learned this only after her disappearance, but George said Evelyn refused to discuss that period of her life. She once told him the boys were not the dangerous people inside the camp. The owl crossed a broken section of fence and landed on a stone chimney remaining from one of the burned dormitories. Daniel found drops of blood beneath the tree, though they may have come from the injured bird. The owl flew toward a collapsed maintenance building and disappeared through an opening in the roof. Daniel waited for Lena and Hannah before entering. Hannah located the owl inside, tangled in nylon cord above an old storage room. The cord had cut its wing, and something metallic glinted among the debris below. They freed the bird and placed it inside a ventilated carrier. Under the rotting floorboards, Daniel found an open metal box filled with keys. Most were rusted. Several had numbered tags. Evelyn's silver key matched a modern lock and appeared cleaner than the rest. The owl likely entered the building chasing rodents, became tangled, and pulled the key free while struggling through the box. That explained how it acquired the object. It did not explain why Evelyn's key was hidden beneath the floor. Lena searched the room and discovered scratches beside a steel shelving unit. Behind it was a narrow door painted to match the wall. The silver key opened the lock. A staircase descended beneath the ruined building. The air smelled of damp concrete, animal waste, and disinfectant. Daniel radioed for state police and ordered the property secured. Before reinforcements arrived, a generator started somewhere underground. Lights flickered below. Someone knew they were there. Daniel and Lena entered with weapons drawn. The staircase ended in a corridor lined with doors. The walls looked far newer than the burned structure above. Cameras watched from the ceiling, though several had been turned away. One room contained bedding, bottled water, medical supplies, and children's drawings. Another held filing cabinets packed with school records, psychiatric evaluations, custody documents, and photographs of former youth center residents. Some files dated from the 1980s. Others were recent. A wooden desk contained a teacher's planner with Evelyn Moore's name stamped inside. Her final entry read, Daniel Carter, ask about missing boys who were never reported. Beneath it was a list of 7 names. Daniel recognized 2 as men officially declared runaways from the youth center many years earlier. 3 were former Pine Hollow students who disappeared after entering foster care. One name belonged to Noah Grant, a 10-year-old boy currently enrolled in Evelyn's 4th grade class. Noah had not disappeared. He lived with his uncle, construction foreman Dean Mercer, and frequently missed school because of supposed illness. Evelyn's final parent conference had been with Dean. The troubled student mentioned in initial reports was Noah. Daniel called the deputy stationed at Dean's house and ordered him to locate the boy immediately. No one answered. The patrol unit found the property empty, its rear door open, and a meal still warm on the stove. A security monitor inside the underground corridor turned on. Victor Vail appeared on the screen from an unknown location. He wore a dark coat and stood beside a vehicle. Sheriff Carter, he said, you have entered a restricted environmental site without proper equipment. Leave now, and we can prevent unnecessary injuries. Daniel asked where Evelyn was. Victor smiled. The teacher became confused. She developed an unhealthy obsession with records she did not understand. Her key was inside your building. Then perhaps she trespassed before she disappeared. Where is Noah Grant? Victor's expression changed slightly. With his legal guardian. The screen went dark. An alarm sounded, followed by the smell of gasoline entering the ventilation system. Someone intended to burn the underground rooms. Daniel and Lena searched for another exit while smoke filled the corridor. Behind the final door, they heard pounding. The lock did not respond to Evelyn's key. Daniel shot the mechanism and forced the door. Inside were three people. Noah Grant, a teenage girl named Sophia Reed, who had vanished from a neighboring county 2 years earlier, and an elderly man Daniel recognized from an old youth center photograph. His name was Marcus Bell. He had been listed as a runaway at age 14, 38 years earlier. All three were weak but alive. Marcus knew the tunnels. He led them through a drainage passage beneath the old kitchen, while flames spread from the stairwell. They emerged in a ravine several hundred yards from the burned dormitory. Fire crews contained the blaze before it destroyed all evidence. But someone had removed several computers and recent files. Noah was taken to the hospital. He asked repeatedly whether Miss Moore had been found. Daniel sat beside him once doctors allowed questioning. Noah said Evelyn discovered bruises on his back and suspected Dean was hurting him. She also noticed Noah drew the same underground hallway in several assignments. When she asked about it, Noah revealed that his uncle sometimes took him to a place beneath the old camp, where men stored boxes and locked people inside rooms. Dean threatened to send him away permanently if he spoke. Evelyn arranged the parent conference to confront Dean and planned to report him afterward. During the meeting, Dean claimed Noah had run into the forest near Old Quarry Road. He persuaded Evelyn to help search. When she arrived, he struck her, took her keys, and forced her into a truck. Noah was already inside. Evelyn fought long enough for him to escape through another door, but Victor's security guard caught him. They brought both to the underground facility. Noah remained there for several weeks before Dean moved him home and warned him that Evelyn died because she tried helping. She was alive when he last saw her. Evelyn spent her captivity speaking with Marcus through air vents. Marcus told her the youth center had never truly closed. During its operation, wealthy families and officials used it to hide children who could expose abuse, inheritance fraud, or criminal activity. Some residents were forced to work at illegal mining sites. Others had their identities changed and were moved through unregulated private homes. Victor Vale's father supplied transportation and bribed judges, police, and social workers. After the public closure, Victor continued using underground sections to store records and confine witnesses. Marcus survived because he maintained electrical and ventilation systems. He had lived beneath the property most of his life, convinced authorities would return him to the people who imprisoned him. Evelyn persuaded him to preserve evidence. Together, they copied records and hid keys in different rooms. The silver key opened a cabinet containing recent transport schedules. Before Evelyn was moved, she placed it inside the old box beneath the floor, hoping demolition workers would find it. The owl discovered it first. Noah remembered hearing Victor say Evelyn would be taken to the school that has no students. Pine Hollow County contained 4 closed schools, but only one had no official enrollment history. St. Agnes Rural Academy, a private building listed as a retreat center owned through a Vale Foundation. It stood 40 miles away near the state line. Daniel requested warrants, but Victor's attorneys delayed access by claiming the site housed vulnerable patients and confidential medical records. Marcus provided something stronger. He had memorized truck schedules and license plates. A transport was leaving St. Agnes that evening with 4 transfers, one identified by initials EM. State police surrounded the property before sunset. The school appeared abandoned from the road, but thermal cameras detected people in the basement. Officers entered after guards opened fire from an upper window. They found 6 adults and 4 children held in locked classrooms. Evelyn was among them. She was thin, bruised, and had an untreated fracture in one wrist. But she stood when Daniel entered. "You found the key," she whispered. "An owl did." For the first time in months, Evelyn smiled. Victor Vale and Dean Mercer were not there. Records showed they planned to cross into Canada using false identities. Daniel issued nationwide alerts. Lena examined the transport routes recovered from the underground cabinet. One vehicle had left Pine Hollow before the raid and headed toward a private airfield owned by Vale Timber. Officers intercepted it near the border. Dean was driving. Victor sat in the rear beside 2 containers of records and a handgun. They surrendered after a road barrier stopped the truck. Victor claimed he was evacuating company documents from a forest fire and had no knowledge of prisoners. Dean attempted to blame everything on Victor and disclosed burial locations near the old youth center in exchange for leniency. Investigators found human remains in 5 unmarked graves. DNA identified several former residents classified as runaways. One was a teacher who disappeared after reporting abuse in 1994. Another was a county inspector whose death had been recorded as a boating accident. The conspiracy extended through decades of judges, doctors, deputies, foster agencies, and private companies. Some participants had died. Others remained influential. Files preserved by Marcus and Evelyn connected them to altered identities, stolen inheritances, illegal labor, medical experimentation, and child trafficking. Evelyn explained why she never spoke about her 6 months at the center. As a young teacher, she witnessed a boy locked in an isolation room after reporting that guards took residents into the quarry at night. She tried contacting authorities. The director told her the boy had been transferred. Days later, men followed Evelyn home and threatened her father. She resigned and convinced herself leaving would keep her family safe. For years, guilt remained hidden beneath her quiet life. When Noah described the underground hallway, she recognized details from the camp and understood the operation had survived. She began collecting evidence alone because she did not know which officials could be trusted. She intended to approach Daniel after obtaining the transport schedules. Dean abducted her first. Daniel asked why she wrote his name in the planner. "Because you were the only official who kept searching after people stopped watching," she answered. Trials lasted more than 4 years. Victor Vale faced charges for kidnapping, murder, trafficking, conspiracy, arson, fraud, and obstruction. Dean Mercer pleaded guilty to multiple abductions, but still received a life sentence. Several retired officials were prosecuted using records recovered from the tunnels. Families learned that children declared runaways had sometimes been killed, renamed, or transferred across state lines. Not every mystery could be solved. Some files ended with numbers instead of names. Yet many survivors were located. Marcus Bell entered the world as a free man for the first time since childhood. He struggled with crowds, daylight, and ordinary decisions. Evelyn helped him obtain identification and reconnect with a younger sister who believed he died decades earlier. Their reunion was not cinematic. She stared at him for several minutes, touched a scar above his eyebrow, and asked what song their mother sang during storms. Marcus answered correctly. They embraced without speaking. Noah was removed permanently from Dean's custody and placed with a maternal aunt. He returned to school slowly. Evelyn did not resume teaching immediately. Locked classroom doors triggered panic, and the smell of disinfectant brought back underground rooms. She attended therapy and later worked with children recovering from abuse. Her experience changed how Pine Hollow schools handled unexplained injuries, repeated absences, and drawings that adults once dismissed as imagination. Daniel faced criticism for entering the underground facility before backup arrived. An internal review concluded the immediate fire threat justified his actions, though procedures changed afterward. He remained sheriff until retirement and created an independent unit for cold cases involving vulnerable children and institutional abuse. No single department could control or erase the evidence. The owl recovered at Hannah Cole's Wildlife Center. Its wing injury healed after several weeks. Tests found traces of soil and fibers from the hidden storage room on its talons, confirming where it picked up the key. Reporters wanted to name the owl Evelyn, but Hannah refused. The bird was male and had no understanding of missing teachers or criminal evidence. She released him near Briarwood Forest at dusk. Daniel and Evelyn watched from a distance as he flew toward the trees. The owl's role was explainable. He entered the ruined building after rodents, became tangled near the key box, tore the silver key free, and flew until exhaustion forced him onto Daniel's porch. The metal may have remained caught around his talon or dropped only when he landed. Daniel's farmhouse lights were among the few visible through the storm. There was no proof the owl deliberately chose the sheriff or recognized the importance of the initials. The coincidence did not make the discovery meaningless. A wild animal carried evidence from a hidden room to the one person who immediately understood what it was. Years later, Evelyn visited Daniel after his retirement. He kept the silver key in a glass case beside a copy of the recovered transport schedule. The original belonged to the State Evidence Archive, but investigators allowed him a replica engraved with the same initials. Evelyn asked whether he still thought about that morning. Daniel looked toward the porch railing. "Every time something hits the door before sunrise." Briarwood Forest eventually became protected public land. The underground facility was sealed after investigators documented every room. A memorial was built on the site of the old youth center. It listed the names of residents confirmed dead and left blank spaces for those still unidentified. Marcus requested that the surviving corridor not be turned into a tourist attraction. "We were hidden there long enough," he said. "People do not need to walk through our fear to believe it happened." The county agreed. Evelyn returned to teaching part-time when she was ready. On her first day, students gave her a paper owl with a cardboard key hanging from its claws. She laughed, then cried in the empty classroom after they left. She placed it near her desk, not as a symbol of magic, but as a reminder that evidence could travel through unexpected hands, wings, and accidents. The story became famous in its simplest form. An owl dropped the missing teacher's key on the sheriff's porch and led him to the place where she had been held. The full truth was less simple. The owl did not guide Daniel directly to Evelyn. It revealed the first hidden door. Noah remembered the underground hallway. Marcus preserved names and routes. Lena secured the evidence. State officers found the school. Evelyn survived long enough to leave clues inside a system designed to erase people. The rescue required years of courage from people who had been frightened into silence. But every investigation has a moment when possibility enters the room. In this case, it arrived before dawn with an injured wing, landed on wet porch boards, and released a silver key marked with two familiar initials.